You are listening to the Love Makes a Way podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Hoffman, founder and president of Life Options Network. On this podcast, we will discuss overcoming through Christ and how we as the church can create a culture of life. I look forward to having you with me today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Love Makes a Way. It is a wonderful day because we have a very special guest today. Calah Casper has been a friend out here in Tennessee, and she is somebody who has an incredible story for you. She is a supporter at a deliverance ministry here called Lebanon House of Prayer in Lebanon, Tennessee. And her husband, Jake, live here. They have a daughter. She is an absolute just full of wisdom. And she just has so much to share with you today when it comes to how to keep your heart and your mind healthy and how to really walk with Jesus through all circumstances. Her incredible story is very powerful. This is definitely not an episode for kids, so I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. But welcome, friend, to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. So you've been in Lebanon for about 6 years now.
Yes.
And you and your husband, Jake, do this beautiful ministry. Tell us your story. What led you guys to be a part of really doing deliverance and helping people with things like suicide and depression?
Yeah. So I moved here to Tennessee. My husband was already living here. He moved in I think 2015, 2016, and I came in 2018, late of 2018. So kind of what brought me to Tennessee, well, I have a twin sister that also had lived in the area at that time. She was going to school at Trevecca. So that was also a push to come because we're super close. She doesn't live here now, but for that season, it was super special to be with her. But in 2017, there was a loss in our family. So my husband had committed suicide. So at that point in life, we were married for 2 years together for a total of 5. So yeah, I was his first love. He was mine. So we didn't have any children, but we were fostering a baby at the time. So we had done the fostering to adopt for a year. So when my husband passed, I also lost the baby as well. Yeah. So I was just in this place where, I was raised in Arkansas from the time I was 3 to the time till 2018. So I'd spent my whole life in Arkansas. It was home, amazing family, friends there. I grew up as a PK for a little background. So I was raised in the church, went to, Sunday school from out of the womb to, never miss a Sunday. Yeah. So I knew everything church life, religious life, like I knew all the things. But this totally wrecked our family.
Wow. Was this like a complete out of the blue circumstance with your husband?
Yeah. So he was not raised like in the church. He wasn't raised a Christian. He actually gave his life to the Lord in 2013. So I had met him. We just became great friends, similar interests. We were just really tight friends, like before anything. And so he really spent a lot of time with my family, and started like coming to our local church. And it was just so cool to see him blossom. So it's cool that I got to see like before he knew the Lord and then during the time where he knew the Lord. So shortly after we started hanging out more, he gave his life to the Lord. I remember we were in a church setting, but we weren't in a service, but like our altars, you can go to the altar anytime, but I think we were there for like a youth group event. I think we were helping with that. I can't remember, but I just remember him going into the sanctuary on his own and just kneeling down at the altar. And he was just like crying out to the Lord. And then my dad had gone and prayed over him at the altar. So I know, and I have that. Actually ran across that picture the other day, and it was super special just to see.
So he went up to the altar and your father's praying for him.
Yes.
At that point, were you kind of going, is there something else I don't know? Or were you just thinking there was, just having a bad day or needed prayer?
Yeah, well, in that moment, he really gave his whole life to the Lord. And so it was really like a celebration. So we were all, the Holy Spirit was so present. Like his presence was just, and I think that's why he like had to kneel and like be face down, like, because the presence and the glory, it was so thick in the room. And it's so cool. And I love that because it's just his presence.
Yeah.
It's just like the Lord had tugged him and was just constantly pulling at him, and he felt that and he accepted and said yes. But I had no idea, that was a struggle for him. I had no idea that, he was being tormented. There were some things in his past that, that were hard. And I just don't think he ever like walked through.
So what was that? You don't have to share the whole thing, but is there anything that if there was another mom or woman that was dealing with this with her husband that you might say, if this is in their past, you might want to think about it?
Yeah. I would say divorce is one. And really like the age the child was. And if there's other kids, he was a middle child in the divorce. So the middle child, the older one went with one, the younger one went with the other. And Eric was just kind of, hanging out at both homes. And then he would kind of just couch hop during his high school days and years. So he really was just, he didn't have that place, I don't think he felt maybe to call home. So, I would definitely say if there was any type of trauma, like as a baby, as a child, abuse is a big one. So anything basically hatred towards the child, even if the baby is a baby,
Sure.
Like that carries. And people don't understand like the power of words, even as a child, how it can stick with somebody forever.
Wow.
So
what was the point where, he took his life, obviously, and you're now at home. What was that moment like? I know it's kind of hard, but for you to be in that position, and then how did you overcome? I think that would probably be, I don't even know how you would get through that, to be honest. Like, I know that there are people that do, and it's incredible. And that's why we're having you on the show.
Yeah.
That God does make a way in all these circumstances. But talk about that and how you were able to move past all of it.
Yeah. So I will say this. We did have a church. So he was a pastor. So I think that's super significant for our listeners to hear, like, just because someone's, a pastor or seems super knowledgeable about the word and these things, like, you're not exempt from this.
Yep.
And there's a lot of shame wrapped around it. So a lot of people don't feel like they can be open and honest, especially if you are in like a lead position of something. And it could be manager of a job or a father, or husband.
Well, yeah, I know part of my story is getting set free from suicide and depression. And I was a leader at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember not having the confidence or the assuredness that I would have a safe answer from somebody in the midst of kind of that story, which I'll be sharing on here more later about. But, I think that is such a misnomer. And I hope that even for listeners who are listening, who are leaders, who are pastors, there needs to be a shame lid pulled off of this.
Absolutely.
Because the enemy works in secret and he works in silence when we are not willing to say, I am struggling. And it's this idea that as a leader, we have to have everything perfect and all together, and the presentation has to be perfect. And it's kind of like, well, actually, like, Jesus said that we were supposed to go to each other, safe people,
Right.
good people who will protect your heart. But there should be an open conversation if this is something you're struggling with,
Right.
especially in circles where I think maybe deliverance isn't something that's mentioned. I think there could probably be more of a struggle when you just, it's not a normal part of the conversation when it comes to suicide and depression. And hey, these are spiritual, entities,
Right.
oftentimes, maybe not always, but oftentimes that are going to come after. And then you've got even the physical health and these types of things
Right.
of the stress of the physical body and how that can react. So I just think there's so much there.
Yes.
And I think it's beautiful that you're sharing that, because I hope that if there is a leader listening, that they will actually go get the help that they need.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've been on this journey of really wanting people to understand how good Jesus is. and I think that's, if you want to give a synopsis of what we're doing at Love Makes a Way, and even at Life Options Network, it's God is so big, and he's so able to heal
Yes.
our hearts in our circumstances. Was there you talked about your family, your community
Mhm.
coming around you. What was something they did that was really helpful and beneficial to you in that moment?
Something that you would definitely not think. Like my best friend, she had walked with me through like our marriage. Like she was just there like from the start. Her name's Allie, and she was just like a gem from the start. So it wasn't anything that she didn't come in with like wise words. We were actually all of us together, our families were together that night, actually, that he took his life. So we had gone to, this was right before Christmas. So we were going to like a Christmas event with our kids. And so we had done that and then went home. And then Corinne and I, my twin sister, like I said, was in Nashville at the time, but she had come home for the holidays. So my sister and I were going to go run that evening because week before Christmas, and we wanted to make it super special for Jack. So we were doing all of the things. So we were like, we need a good sweat, before the week. So, and my husband, prior, we had gotten into an argument, and he had said, like, please don't go, like, to run. So, I said, babe, like, we're not going to be long. Just give me an hour. I'll put our foster baby to bed and then we'll leave. He worked a night, so he had like a few hours that he needed to sleep and then get up and go to work. So it was in that time frame that he had taken his life, after my sister and I had left the house. So I immediately called. So after we got home and I saw him in our bedroom, obviously check on the baby. The baby was fine. I believe the Lord shielded his ears because he was in the exact same position that I laid him. Wow. And so I feel like the Lord totally like protected him in that moment, to where he didn't, like, he was only one at the time, but I feel like the Lord just totally put a shield around him, I believe. But I had called my friend Allie because we were just together. Obviously my sister was with me. So she, the police and medics and everyone was on their way. And I just called Allie and I was like, he's not breathing. Like he's not, something has happened. So she immediately came over. She had 2 kids at the time. So she, just left them with her husband, Josh. And she immediately came over. I was sitting in the car while they were, bringing out his body. And so my best friend, she just like, her and my sister just got in the car with me and just sat in the car. Obviously I was in shock. I mean, I didn't even cry for a while because like, you're just in shock,
Right.
She just sat with me and it wasn't anything that she said. She just was there. So show up for your friends is a big thing. Like show up for the people that you love. Even when it's an inconvenience, this is major. So obviously like your friends are going to come, but, it was the days after that too. And I didn't have a huge community. I mean, I was not living here, obviously, in the community I am now.
Sure.
But my parents had came, both of them, and then my friend Allie, and then my whole work community like met me at the hospital at that time.
Wow.
So I just went. I don't even know what they, probably a Xanax or something that they gave me. I don't even know what. That's all a blur, but probably something just to, I was having like severe like anxiety attack that night, and so something probably just to help me sleep. But they all were outside waiting for me. So that like sticks out to me. Just that like people showed up, people not with the right things to say, just like showed up. Yeah. Like the weeks to come, like my friends would just bring me like a Sonic drink, like my favorite, like raspberry water Sonic water. Like, I mean, that seems so silly, but it was like moments like that where it's just like, they didn't come in trying to like fix it,
yeah,
but just sit with me in the grief. That was big. And I had so many people praying, reaching out. Like the Seabrights here in Lebanon, like they are a big piece of my story. And his sister, Christy, she lives, she doesn't live around here. She lives in Ohio, but like, I just remember her calling and praying and, praying over me over the phone. And like, she's a counselor. So she like prayed with me over the trauma. And I just remember the Lord giving me visions and like taking away these images that were haunting me because,
Sure.
That sticks with you when you see something so horrific.
Yeah.
And, I just thought, wow, I'm going to see this for the rest of my life. Every time I close my eyes to go to sleep,
Wow.
So
Wow.
definitely showing up, just my friend showing up helped so much. Walking me through that. But the Lord, like, it is so hard to explain. Like, there's no words for like who he is in these moments. But when he says, I'm close to the brokenhearted and take care of the widows, I mean, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, his presence was magnified. It was like chaos was all around me. So many times it was like an outer body experience, like the funeral,
Wow.
His spreading his ashes. Like, it's hard for a human, like, we were not created for that kind of trauma,
Right.
Yeah.
or to go through these things.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lord literally, I don't know, he's just something different in those moments to where, it's really, you have no control. So like you let go of all control
Yeah.
in complete surrender. Like, God, I feel like Job, like I have nothing. Like lost our home, my husband, my dogs, my foster baby that we had planned to adopt, like our whole future together, like the future of us. And, that was all gone. So the Lord was like all I had. I had my amazing family, my amazing friends, but when that's like stripped away, you either get bitter and and just are angry, or you tell the Lord, like, God, I'm angry. I don't understand. I feel alone. And he just meets you. I mean, his presence, I had so many tangible dreams, like visions. Like, this seems so silly, but one time I had gone out of the shower and I was putting on a pair of sweatpants and I was just crying. Like, it took me forever to look at myself in a mirror. And I remember the first time that I did, and I was just like, I didn't want to see myself because obviously I had held on to guilt. Like Eric asked me to stay that night and I didn't, and if I would have, he would still be alive. Like, the enemy just constantly, through these lies, but it seems so silly. And I was just telling the Lord this, like in my shower. And I remember, drying off and then putting on these sweatpants. And I remember walking out into the hall and just reaching in my pocket and finding a Band-Aid. And the Lord was like, and it was weird that I did not put that Band-Aid in there, but the Lord just spoke to me and he's like, he's like, your heart is shattered now, but I'm putting it back together, and like, I'm the healer. And like, his voice was just so loud in these moments, like in these months. And now still, like, I just hear him differently.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had been in the church my whole life. But it was like I was seeing something I'd never seen before. And I was hungry for like his power.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, there's got to be something more than just church on Sunday and Wednesday.
Amen.
You know, so.
Wow.
It sounds like you just met a completely different side of God
Absolutely.
than you had known previous.
Right. And I mean, I felt like I had, you know, a strong relationship with the Lord. Like I knew so much about him, but, we had, I mean, there's levels of intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
but this just, he was everything. Like he was everything. And I could just hear him so clearly.
Yeah.
And I believe that's available to all of us if we just say yes and are open and lay down control.
Yeah.
Because I was the type of person, I would have to know everything that was going to happen that day. It is so funny because I'm so different now. Like, you know, my husband and I have just gotten up in the mornings, you know, when we were first married, and like, do you want to drive to Gatlinburg today? And we're like, sure, let's do it. Like, no, I mean, just, you know, when something like that, when tragedy happens, you see things differently. But I used to be, I mean, I was like okay, if we're going to be somewhere at 9, I have to look up how much time it takes to get there. So we got to, I mean, to the T,
Wow.
you know, which is good. It's going to be punctual. It was, I had my whole life like figured out.
Yeah.
Our future, like we're going to have a farm, and we were going to have like a ministry on this farm, and like, I mean, it was all mapped out. So
Talk more about that. I mean, you are obviously, you know, had big goals
yeah,
and plans, and then in one night, like they just all come crashing down.
yeah.
And how has God, you know, kind of changed maybe your heart posture towards those goals, or, you know, kept that same vision only in a different format? What has that been like?
Yeah. It's so crazy because, like I said, we had so many dreams together, and I mean, it was only together, so it didn't work with just me. So I went through a season of just angry. Like I was angry, like obviously that this happened, but I had to walk through anger of him like leaving, you know,
Right.
or making that choice.
Yeah.
Because it changed everything in my life, and I didn't know what to do now. And so I had to really walk through that. And that sounds harsh, but that's just being honest. Like I had to walk through like grieving him, but also like our future.
Yes.
And I still have to like, there are times where I still kind of wrestle with that, just kind of, you know, just continue to give it to the Lord, you know, just like, would life have looked like, you know, like, would we have adopted that boy? You know, there were so many things. But the Lord was so good in those moments to just meet me and not rush my healing, but just meet me in those moments and let me vent to him, you know, and my anger and frustration of just, what do I do now?
Yeah.
But it was about 6 months after Eric had passed. This is when I really just got, because I mean, I was walking through shock, trauma, all those things. So I was still very fresh into like healing. But I just remember thinking, God, like he was a pastor. He was so tender to the Lord, so tender. I mean, he heard the Lord's voice. It wasn't like he was just doing religion. Like he was like on his face, like crying out to the Lord, like for our people in the church. And he was huge, like 6'6". So he looked like this big, tough guy, but he was just so tender with the Lord. But I remember, that 6 months after, I was just like, there's got to be an answer. So I just started digging in the word, trying to find something like, is this normal? Like, is there nothing better than people who follow the Lord but they're
Still
not,
struggle.
and still struggle? And is there not healing for this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I really feel like I just received like this mandate. I just remember the Lord saying, Calah, you've never dealt with this personally, like struggled with suicide and depression and severe anxiety, but like you're gonna be my voice for it.
Amen.
Like I'm gonna be the avenue for healing,
I love it.
even though I've never personally walked through it. And I just remember the Lord telling me that so clearly. And this was in June, so it was months after he had passed. But then I just gave my life to that.
Yeah.
Really.
Beautiful.
So I know it's funny to see, how the dreams and vision can change, but like he stays the same.
Yeah.
But he just like works through, oh my goodness, anything.
Yes.
And I've really just been like diving into that ever since. Like my biggest thing like after was, I do not want to see any more suicides. I don't want to hear of anyone having severe anxiety, depression. I don't want that to be normal because it's not normal. It's not.
So now at Lebanon House of Prayer, can you go there if you are struggling with something like that? And will they take you in and pray for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will personally. Absolutely. We, yes, our ministry at the House of Prayer there's very few like it. It's very special. We have a lot of prophetic people. So normally if you have something like that, there's somebody that's going to know already.
Sure.
And perhaps go to you and say, do you struggle with this?
Sure.
We meet Thursday nights at 6 down on Lebanon Square. And so like if anyone comes up, I mean, that happens weekly,
awesome.
During our gatherings. The Lord's presence is just so thick in there. We're just hungry for his presence. We're hungry for the Spirit. We're hungry just for whatever he wants to do. But normally when you come in, you do not stay the same.
Absolutely.
So if you're open, if you're, hungry for the Lord.
Wow.
And seeking.
Well, we're so honored that you shared this today. And if anybody needs help, especially in the Middle Tennessee area, I think Lebanon House of Prayer I would highly recommend.
Yes.
You and Brooke and Chad, they're just powerful ministers. They love Jesus so much, and it's just so evident, which is why I wanted to have you on. But to any pastors, any leaders who need the support, there are people that can pray with you and support you and get you to, a place where you don't have to walk in that anymore. And having seen freedom in my own life from that, I know that God is a deliverer, and he can and he does deliver you from anything that might seem shameful, but the enemy is just a liar.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. So we're so blessed to have you, and
thank you.
Thank you for being on here today with us.
Yes, it's been an honor.
Thank you for listening to Love Makes a Way. If you would like to support Life Options Network, you can go to lifeoptionsnetwork.org/donate. I am so glad you were with us today.